Pretty much since the announcement of Metroid Prime 4, the question has been out there. Will this game have some sort of online multiplayer? The series is no stranger to multiplayer modes. We had it in Prime 2, there was the Metroid Prime Hunters game on the DS, and Metroid Prime Federation Force. Metroid Prime Federation Force is another game that exists, I guess. Oh, do you remember Blast Ball? Yeah, I wish I could forget too. And with all the recent rumors surrounding this game, some have pointed to it having an online component, but I don't really think there is anyone who sees this as totally out of the question. To me, the questions are, does this game need a multiplayer mode? Do you want it? Would you play it? That sorts of stuff. Now, I know there are people out there who have varying degrees of love, perhaps for some of these old Prime multiplayer experiences. Hunters seems to have a surprising amount of love for it. I was never big on any of these, but I'm aware that there are plenty of people who dug them in their day. And let's not forget the looming Nintendo paid online service. You know, the Big N has to be thinking about all the ways they could pull players into that program, and while I don't think they'd go around mindlessly like tacking on multiplayer to games where it doesn't make sense, just the fact that the Prime games are first-person shooters, you'd have to assume they're considering it. And if they did do an online component, they'd probably have to go pretty hard on it. I don't think they'd want something that feels cheap and tacked on, again, with this game being such a big deal. So if it does get multiplayer, the worry would then be, how does this affect the single player? Me personally, sure, if the multiplayer was really solid, I could probably get into it, but make no mistake about it, I'm buying this game for the single player experience, full stop. And I expect I won't accept anything less than something deserving of that number 4 in the Metroid Prime series, alright? So of course, I'd be worried about the division of resources. You can only assume the game has X amount of dollars to be spent on its development, and that would have to be divided somehow between the single player and multiplayer modes. If you feel the same as me, sure, you could just say, no, don't do it. Just put everything towards making an amazing single player experience. But we do have to consider the sales. Again, with the FPS genre these days, sadly, it's tough to sell a lot of people on something that doesn't have, again, some sort of online multiplayer. And if they can balance it properly, you could wind up with a lot more sales, plus a new attraction for that online service. But also, if you screw it up, you could wind up turning off both audiences. It's a gamble. Now, when you think about multiplayer, I think most of our minds go to some, straight up deathmatch versus type stuff. Perhaps it's team-based, but there are more options than that. There can be objective-based versus modes, and also, let's not forget, there could be cooperative stuff. That's actually something I've been discussing that I want more of with the Switch, cooperative multiplayer experiences. I think there are a lot of people out there who, when they say they don't like multiplayer, they really mean they don't like competitive multiplayer, the versus stuff. I think cooperative play really belongs in its own category, but nevertheless, could be a potential aspect of a possible Prime 4 online experience. Another attraction I could see here is the possibility for players to customize their own bounty hunter. Similar to what I've been praising in games like Monster Hunter, being able to customize and unlock cool armor, weapons, gear, etc. can be an enticing offer that keeps players coming back to something like this for a long time. But obviously, the fear with stuff like that is, you guessed it, things like loot boxes and microtransactions. Now, Nintendo has been one of the best, in my opinion, with the DLC type things, but one thing I've learned in the business of video games is certainly never say never. But personally, if, say, we got some co-op stuff, and there was some unlocking in that to do, that whole create your own bounty hunter of sorts, I could see myself getting into something like that. But don't get it twisted, still, I'm going to be buying this game for the single player, expecting amazing things from it. And I know many, probably the majority of those of you who are also highly anticipating this game, are expecting the same. This franchise has been built off great campaigns that ironically are all about giving the player that feeling of isolation. Nintendo, you can't afford to compromise here, I can tell you that for free. But it's not like you can't do both, and do them well. It's been done plenty of times before. And a solid multiplayer mode could be something that puts this game over with many people who may not be big Metroid fans, which admittedly, they're going to have to pull in for this game to be a massive success. As much as those of us who love Metroid, well, as much as we love it, there aren't as many of us as we'd like. And while Metroid has come back into the limelight of late, only strong sales will allow it to remain there. And multiplayer, if done well, could be the key to doing just that. Like, Metroid on its own, let's be real, people. You know, I think there is a renewed interest in the series, but Metroid isn't going to do Mario numbers. It's not going to do Zelda numbers. Certainly not going to do Pokemon numbers, okay? A standout multiplayer mode could perhaps, you know, push those numbers up a bit at least. Still, it's worth repeating a million times. If it takes away too much from the campaign, just falls flat in general, it could be the thing that sends the series right back into hiding. Anyway, with that, this video's a wrap. Let me know your thoughts on the potential of online multiplayer in Metroid Prime 4 in the comments. You know, would you be interested in some online modes? What would you want to see from them? Or should they just go all in on the campaign? As always, I'm John Zakari, and thanks for watching.